Welcome to Veritas Live. I'm your host, Eric Wiggins, and we have a spectacular show today. As always, we love to know where you're watching from, so let us know in the comments so we can give your country or city a shout out on the show. We also encourage audience participation, so please submit your questions in the comments during the show, and time permitting, we will answer them. Today, we're exploring the future of data compliance. Our guests today are Chris Stapenhurst, Senior Principal Product Manager here at Veritas. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. And Drew Samuelson, Principal AI Product Manager here at Veritas. And welcome back to the show, Andrew.
Thanks, Eric. Great to see you and Chris again.
So we love a good icebreaker to start our show, get the conversation flowing. And today I want to know both of your opinions on, is September too early for holiday decorations to be on sale? I saw them on sale actually in August, which I was shocked to see, in the line with bringing back the pumpkin spice flavor into everything. So I'd love to know what you think about that. Andrew, Chris, either one.
Okay, so I would say, oh, go ahead, Andrew.
No, go ahead. It's fine for them to be on sale. That's my hot take. I'm extremely regimented this time of year. October is far and away my favorite month. So I think you can start getting ready for Halloween now. As soon as Halloween passes, Thanksgiving, and then as soon as Thanksgiving passes, your December holiday of choice. That's how I'm breaking everything down very compartmentally.
Okay, well, I've got an opposite opinion than Andrew, and I think that's part of what this debate is all about. But fair enough. I'm not a big fan of this. My family certainly is. Everything goes on sale early. It's an excuse to buy more stuff. And as we get closer, we don't stop buying more stuff to the holidays. We just continue. And at the end, we end up with more than what we need, and we just end up displaying the best of the bunch, and the forgotten items never get displayed. So feel bad for those items.
I prefer things to go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say there's definitely a governance joke in there somewhere, but I don't know how to make it. Yeah.
I mean, I think you made the point in governance, and there needs to be a particular order to the sale in terms of holiday decorations. I don't like seeing Christmas stuff before Halloween stuff. That's the piece that I get frustrated with. And like we skip over Thanksgiving. And since my birthday's in November, I love to see Thanksgiving decorations. So it frustrates me that there's stuff that for Christmas right next to back to school and Halloween. It just seems obnoxious. So, well, let's jump into our topic. So our first question is for you, Chris. How do you see the convergence of AI, analytics, and data governance reshaping the future of data compliance? And what are the potential benefits and risks associated with this integration?
Right. So that's a big question. Let me start off with sort of the benefits, right?
Okay.
Our world is becoming sort of increasingly complex, right? As knowledge workers, we're forced to make more and more decisions every day, right, to address this complexity of what's happening in sort of the global sphere of everything. And it's gotten to the point where we're constantly being asked to make so many decisions that organizations can't just throw more bodies at the problem, right? We've hit sort of some linearity where more bodies is just not solving the issue. And so we really need sort of artificial intelligence to help us make these huge amounts of decisions every day. It's kind of like the invention of math or the calculator, how we were able to transform society and finance to be able to count at scale. We need decisions at scale. And this is kind of what's required in sort of the data compliance sphere, right? AI is no longer sort of a must or nice to have. It's become sort of a must have, right? It's a requirement now. And so I think it's satisfying that requirement. So the benefits are sort of obvious. The risks, however, I think are increasing, right? We're seeing an introduction of new risks as we rely on the AI to make decisions or help us make decisions. And the risks that we're seeing are sort of a lack of control into what the AI is doing, a lack of visibility, a lack of overall governance in the whole strategy behind how we come up with the decisions that we're making. And we've seen this manifest itself several ways, right? Algorithmic trading going crazy, losing banks tons of money, racism being exposed by Google and some of the other big technology players out there. So the threat landscape is actually sort of transforming, right? And if we're not careful, this lack of visibility and control means that we're, as a species, no longer going to be in control of our destiny, right? Effectively, if we're not careful, the AI will take over. And when I mean take over, I don't mean like iRobot, right? They're not going to come down the streets with guns and stuff. It'll be more like WALL-E, where the programming of the machine, it's just fulfilling what we designed it to do. However, we no longer have control over how it's doing that, and even the outcome that's being achieved by the AI. And we really need to avoid that if we want to maintain control over our own destiny.
Okay, and I'm sure, Andrew, as the AI product manager, you have an opinion on this or a view on this particular topic.
I've got an opinion and a view on pretty much anything you ask me. Yeah. So it's yeah, I largely agree with Chris here. It's the immediate benefits are obviously efficiency, right? You know, to Chris's point about the calculator, we're seeing unprecedented accuracy and speed in processing more and more information all the time. That part's fantastic. The part that is less fantastic is where the interpretability and the judgment come into play. Obviously, models can have devastating biases. Ultimately, they were all created by humans. And so even when they are kind of self-learning or self-healing, they're doing so with a finger on the scale in that regard, right? You're always going to have some sort of human intervention somewhere along the provenance of every single model. So with that said, the best way to kind of counteract that and make sure you're getting the most benefit out of it is really just transparency, having some degree of explainability, some way of kind of, you know, getting inside of that black box to kind of understand how it is working to some degree, and at least have that degree of, like, you know, analytical observability, and stay away from over reliance. It's real easy nowadays to say, great, we've got this stood up. Nothing's ever truly plug and play, but I'll use the phrase anyway. And it's like, okay, cool, we got AI, the AI is running, the AI is good to go. It's not. It's like anything else. It requires maintenance. It requires some degree of, you know, kind of introspection in terms of how it's operating. And those audits and those observability tools are absolutely critical in this space. But we are already seeing, again, speed and accuracy like we've never seen before, as well as kind of, you know, kind of a huge groundswell towards like proactive management of risk, and including in a more nuanced and granular method because of these technologies.
Yeah, in some of the previous shows on Veritas, like we talked about, we delved into this particular subject in terms of the auditing process and the observability and making sure that you are built in a transparency into your model. So in particular, just to dive into that, do you have a view about that in terms of governance? Like, do you see companies, they need to actually develop a governance framework for their AI models that make sure to enact measurements to meet that expectation of an audit process?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very nascent and just getting started. The one, if you take nothing away from anything I say today, the one thing is you have to ensure that that's a cross-functional effort. It's beyond just IT. It's beyond your data science, your data engineering teams. It's even beyond legal. You need kind of everyone pulling together and ensuring that you don't have any kind of blind spots in the governance and management and maintenance of these models and the way that they're used. Right? It's a tool like any other tool. It can be extremely effective if, you know, used or wielded the, you know, appropriate way. It can also be destructive or harmful if not properly respected and taken care of. And so you do need a, you know, kind of, it takes a village, right? You need to have that cross-functional participation from, you know, almost every relevant stakeholder, all the way from, you know, IT to legal to, you know, especially within the data, and then also how it applies as a business problems. We see this all the time with existing workflows and AI enablement, where the AI enablement doesn't really solve the business problem, but does make the entire thing much more convoluted because it wasn't really thought through properly.
Okay. That's a great segue into my next question, which is, could you share some examples of innovations or solutions or tools that, you know, Veritas is developing to help organizations to manage data compliance in this era where AI And advanced analytics, as you say, play a critical role in keeping up with the speed of innovation and what customers are expecting in terms of delivery of product.
Sure. I'll let Chris speak specifically to kind of search and e-discovery and compliance, as he's the specialist here. I'm a little bit more of a data management generalist in this conversation today. But yeah, the one thing I can say about it is, again, the degree of nuance and granularity that we're able to introduce nowadays has really gone a long way towards proactively managing not only your data estate, but also the compliance use cases your company may or may not have. And again, I'll let Chris kind of speak to that specifically. The way that we're treating everything is business problem first, data second, workflow third. If we're not actually doing something for the customer, then why are we doing it? And then with data, I cannot overstate the importance of establishing, a non-siloed data lake, preferably with some lakehouse architecture associated with it, to ensure you don't get the garbage in, garbage out results that happen so often, especially with initial AI enablement. And so those are kind of our two big focuses, and then obviously examining the existing workflow that you might have, and how appropriately it can be AI enabled with these technology stacks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Chris,
I have to agree with Andrew on this one. Yeah. So yeah, totally agree. So I deal in my role here at Veritas a lot with knowledge workers, right? Whether they be e-com surveillance, e-discovery professionals, privacy professionals, or even more just sort of information governance specialists within the firm. And that intersection between, the business and technology is sort of, it's my comfort zone, right? It's where I sort of live. And you can't just, so you said a couple of great things, Andrew. You can't just throw AI at a problem and think, AI is going to solve it, right? To me, it's sort of like that old security analogy of you need to build sort of your security defense like an onion. It's got to be layers. AI is just one of those layers, right? And it needs to remain one of those layers. We can't eliminate sort of all of the processes and capabilities that we've designed in the past. And Gary Gensler, the chair of the SEC, had a really good opinion on this, and I'm fully on board with what he said. And he essentially said, you can't have a single point of failure within whatever decisions you're looking to make with AI, whatever workflows, whatever business problems. Because if someone circumvents that AI, then what? Then you're in real trouble, right? And so the key is it needs to be one of many things that you're doing to solve your business problems. And within our solution, we've sort of interlayered AI across a bunch of different layers of the onion. So it's not just one thing. So I think that's one really good approach, that you can use AI to solve a multitude of different business problems. And it doesn't have to be this monolithic, here's turn on AI and now it does this, right? AI can help with a lot of things. And so we should take advantage of it that way. One of the other areas that our product set is really focused on is transparency, or AI explainability. Some people call it even source attribution. Understanding why the AI made its decision. This is so critical, right? Because if we lose track of this, then we lose track of the outcome, right? If we can't explain what's going on, we can't explain the outcome. We don't even know what the outcome is or why it's happening. And so we try to provide as much explainability into all of the AI's decisions, so that when that knowledge worker is looking at a particular item, why did this flag for market abuse? They can understand it. When the compliance manager is looking at the item, how is my team behaving? How is the AI learning from my team? They can understand if things are on track or things are off track through all of this source attribution, through the explainability of what's happening within the AI. And this allows the knowledge worker teams to maintain that control and that visibility, that defensibility of using AI in the first place.
Yeah, I would agree. A great answer from both of you. I really, I've learned a lot more in terms of that, and I would say that that's a great segue into my next point. And I like the fact that you brought up the SEC, because in our previous show we talked about how regulation landscape is changing. So, what do you feel, Chris, is with the AI and analytics technologies continuing to evolve, how do you anticipate the regulatory landscape will adapt? And I'd like to get your view on that, and what proactive steps organizations should take ahead of some of the new compliance requirements changes.
Right. Oh, and this is such an evolving space
I
that
know.
it's you know, it's like plate tectonics. You know, you look at it one year and you look at it later, and it's going to be slightly different. So one, there's definitely a viewpoint by a lot of the regulators that organizations need to be using AI to make these decisions, right? If you're
Mhm.
doing linear review for e-discovery or surveillance, looking at one item at a time, that's no longer going to be sufficient, right? And so you're going to fall behind. And so there's an expectation by the regulators that you're using some degree of automation to keep up. You're keeping up with all the changes in the world. You're keeping up with the complexity of the world by using AI. And it's more of a question of why not? Why are you not using AI? And so, for one, I think the regulations are evolving in a way that if you're not using technology to solve them, you need to defend that action. So it's an expectation. One
I,
of the other
I was
areas. Oh, go
Hold
ahead.
on, I just wanted to say I was going to agree with you there. I also, because the regulators are actually using AI now in order to be
Yes.
able to survey and make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So they're using it. So the expectation is then that you need to be using it as well, I would think, overall. So go ahead. Next point that you were going to make.
And next point was kind of related to what I was talking about a little bit earlier. You don't need to understand the algorithm. You don't need to be able to expose it to the regulator, but you need to understand how the algorithm is coming up with its decisions. What are the contributing factors that the machine is considering when it's coming up with an outcome? That way, if there is a bias, that way, if there is some sort of data drift or concept drift that comes into your
Mhm.
universe, you can at least understand its possibility of existence and therefore can defend it. If you have no visibility, no sight lines into what's going on, then I would argue don't use AI because you're just going to get in trouble.
Andrew, have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I do. I'm uncharacteristically bearish when it comes to regulation. Um, my my thought process on the current state of AI regulation is it will ultimately end up mirroring what we've gotten with data privacy regulation, which means the EU will more or less kind of set the goalpost into the ground. They will come up with the most comprehensive kind of rules. Here in the U.S. or Americas, as it were, I think we'll probably see a rather sloppy patchwork approach where the SEC will have one set of rules, the DoD will have another. You'll see different industries and different governmental agencies kind of enact what size fits them, but we won't have. I don't anticipate having any kind of one size fits all or like universal application of AI regulation or compliance here in the US whatsoever. I just don't I don't see that suddenly becoming, it's unprecedented in any other kind of any other kind of application of technology based compliance or regulation. So I don't see it happening with AI either. We definitely need some degree of compliance and regulation. However, I still think it'll probably be like a piecemeal, brick by brick kind of a approach moving forward.
Mostly coming out of probably some lawsuits or,
Yeah,
legislation will be guided by the different pieces of the government.
yeah, I think it's more. I think it's more. It'll be crafted for each industry, right? So like
Mhm.
the FEC and the SEC will have completely different AI concerns, for example, right? As will as will the IRS or the
Mhm.
DoD or the DOE, et cetera, et cetera. Like they just have so many. If you were to craft one blanket piece of legislation, it would be you know thousands, if not millions of pages long. Whereas each one of these kind of functions will have kind of a dedicated application is what I'm expecting to happen in the future.
Yeah, I believe it's
And
the same
I
thing, Andrew.
yeah,
And you're going to see slight differences kind of in the US, but I think one of the other things that I've observed, and perhaps you have as well, is that different regions in the world sort of treat regulations differently. So in the US, it's going to be vague. It's going to be hard to address because you don't exactly know what they're asking for. And you're going to be
uh-huh.
chasing after a regulator constantly for more definition. Whereas in Europe, it's going to be highly defined. It's going to be really fine tuned. And you're going to be stressing to figure out how to demonstrate compliance to those fine tuned regulations that are coming out. And as a global organization, you're going to have to live with all of that and find a way to kind of deal with it. And that'll be a big challenge too, I think. So.
I think the answer will probably be found in AI and how it can, help you to build out your compliance requirements to get you to where you need to be, because it's so complex and so nuanced depending on the subject and industry. Okay. I want to give a shout out to some of the viewers here. We have people from Toronto, from India, and Florida on this morning. So thank you for joining us for the show. I'm going to go ahead and do an audience question. For companies that are not yet technology ready to adopt AI for data compliance, what specific risk or competitive disadvantages might they be facing as a result of that?
Chris, you want to take this one? I'm happy to, but this is I feel this is
yeah.
Okay, this is absolutely in your wheelhouse. So, but like the immediate risk is you're going to get lapped. So if your competitors are adopting these new technology stacks, they're saving time, they're saving money, they're saving effort, which means they're either repurposing those hours into something more productive, or their OpEx is going down, or what other, there are tons of different benefits, right? So if you're on the outside looking in, it's just going to get more and more difficult for you increasingly, as it does with the lack of adoption of any technology, really, right? Mm-hmm. It's why technology exists in the first place. The best thing I would say, and again, I'm very curious to hear Chris's answer on this, is for the love of Pete, like get your data under control, like get your data ready, get your data under control. I've thrown away more models than I've deployed over the years, and data is the flashpoint. It's where the garbage in, garbage out starts. It's where the issues all ultimately reside. Get your data under control at your company first. It'll pave the tarmac for a much smoother takeoff.
Yeah, absolutely. So totally agree. Again, AI, the use of AI, right? Essentially automation, right? It's expected, right? And if you're not doing it, you are falling behind, exactly as you had indicated, Andrew. In terms of how do you get started, right? Let's say you're an organization and you're immature when it comes to its usage of AI. Don't wait, right? Like you should be doing something today, because you're going to get caught behind the curve. And you don't necessarily need to solve your biggest problems first, right? 80-20 when it comes to adopting something new like AI is the key. There's probably some low-hanging fruit that you can get comfortable with how to incorporate AI into your business processes where there's an immediate help and it's easy to implement. Do that first, right? You'll be able to see the mistakes. You'll be able to understand how to better govern it overall. And then you move to your more complicated challenges. It doesn't have to be world-changing. It doesn't have to be super highly accurate, defined, making all the decisions for you. Start with something really easy to do. And I think that's probably the best recommendation I can make to organizations. I've seen too many organizations adopt, data classification programs or adopt AI decision-making models, only to kind of get quagmired because they're trying to apply their, 150 data classification policies against everything and manage the life cycle and retention of all of their data all in one shot. It's not going to happen. Not if you've never done it before. Break it down into big buckets, solve the big buckets first, get further defined and further sophisticated as you gain experience.
That kind of answers the last question I was going to ask you, Chris, which was about, what are your best practices that you would follow and recommend for companies when they're integrating AI analytics into their data compliance strategies? So since you've kind of answered your take on that, Andrew, do you have a view of best practices that people should employ whenever they're working to integrate AI analytics into their data compliance strategies?
Yeah, that's a massively expansive question. Again, I can't agree enough with what Chris said about the 80-20. You're almost always better off establishing something that is very fundamentally or foundationally sound on kind of a small problem that will help you understand how best to kind of use the tool, right? Use the tooling available to you, right? Which and that will go so much further in terms of, okay, this business problem doesn't really need AI. This one very much does. So let's start concentrating here and just kind of build upon each one of those successes. And 9 times out of 10, ultimately the stack that you'll end up having, it will, again, to Chris's point about the onion, it will touch a million other things in your organization. It will touch multiple data tables. It will probably touch any kind of existing RPA that you might have. The way that we're using our technology stack right now is we're essentially distilling all of these complex outputs through an LLM agent, right, as an assistant. That's what the end user sees at the tip of the iceberg. Everything below that is multiple ML models, existing RPA, a whole bunch of other workflows, oftentimes that are legacy and have just been in place for 20 plus years. And so it really is interconnected in that regard. So if you are going to start off on this track, again, the business problem, the data, the workflow, those are the 3 pillars. You should be examining all of those, kind of understanding the whole thing front to back, side to side. Because if you don't really understand the business problem, you're already stuck. If you do or don't have all of the data that you need, well, then you need to either generate, collect, or manufacture that additional data. And if the workflow is problematic to begin with and isn't a very good experience, you should address that workflow and make sure that we're providing the smoothest kind of experience possible for whatever that use case may be.
Okay. Well, I think that's a great way to close the show. So I want to say thank you to both of you for joining us today. I feel very well versed in all things compliance and AI now. So thank you very much, Andrew. And thank you,
You're very
Chris.
welcome.
Thank you.
And if you want to know more about data compliance and what is shaping the future, and you can check out some of these great resources that we have. The first one is our Hanover Research, the Risk and Regulatory Intelligence, a data-driven approach to enhancing compliance strategies. Next, we have our Analytics and Gen AI, Navigating Trust and Governance in the Modern Era. It's a blog by Sonia Bopace. And then third, we all love headlines. We talked about different things around regulatory compliance and what the regulatory agencies are doing. So this one is straight out of the headlines: 26 firms, $392 million in records keeping compliance fines and how to avoid it, by Sonia Bopace. So again, thank you both for joining us today. Thank you to our audience. And remember, stay cyber resilient by keeping your software up to date, back up often, and remember to turn on multi-factor authentication. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.